The birth of banking in the Renaissance, a silent revolution that changed everything. Imagine a time when gold was carried on carts along muddy roads, exposed to bandits, taxes, and the wrath of nature. Trade was slow, dangerous, and uncertain. A merchant could lose his entire fortune before even reaching his destination. This was the reality of medieval Europe, where wealth meant something literal, heavy. Bars of gold and sacks of coins required armed escorts and nerves of steel. In the heart of the Renaissance, however, a silent transformation began. In the 14th century, cities like Florence and Venice were not only cradles of art, but also fertile grounds for financial innovation. Influential families such as the Medici in Italy and the Fugger in Germany began to develop something that would change the rules of commerce forever: the first banks. But these early banks were far from what we know today. They weren't shiny buildings with vaults and digital apps. They began in modest rooms, market stalls, and merchant houses. Their tools? Ledgers, contracts, receipts, and most importantly, trust. The Medici, originally cloth merchants, soon realized that the true power lay not in the goods they traded, but in the flow of money between hands. They started safeguarding coins for fellow merchants and issued receipts in return. Receipts that soon evolved into bills of exchange, early financial instruments that allowed value to be transferred without the need to transport physical money. It was the seed of modern banking, light, efficient, and far more secure. Over time, these banks began offering credit. Lending money with interest was initially frowned upon, considered sinful by the Catholic Church. But soon, even the church realized it needed financing to build cathedrals, wage wars, and expand influence. Thus, bankers gained not only wealth, but power, becoming indispensable to kings, popes, and empires. The connection between money and power became undeniable. The Medici didn't just grow wealthy, they ascended to political dominance. Giovanni de' Medici laid the foundation, followed by Cosimo and later Lorenzo the Magnificent, who shaped not just the fate of Florence, but of Renaissance Europe. They funded artists, philosophers, scientists, not out of charity, but because culture was a powerful political and symbolic currency. Meanwhile, the Fugger family in Germany built a financial empire based on mining and lending to the powerful Habsburg dynasty. Jakob Fugger, known as the Rich, controlled vast mineral resources and financed the election of Charles V as Holy Roman Emperor. He was more than a banker, he was a geopolitical player. Bankers had become architects of destiny. No longer was power reserved solely for bloodlines and noble birth. Now it belonged to those who mastered the art of finance. A new social class was emerging, the bourgeoisie. Merchants and craftsmen who gained access to credit were able to expand their businesses and accumulate wealth, rivaling even the old aristocracy. But this new financial power came with risk. Trust was the bedrock of banking, and once broken, the entire system could collapse. The fall of the Bardi and Peruzzi families, two powerful Florentine banks, sent shockwaves across Europe. They had lent enormous sums to the King of England, who defaulted. Their collapse revealed a hard truth. Credit was a double-edged sword, instrument of growth, but also of ruin. The Renaissance wasn't just a rebirth of culture and science, it was the beginning of a new economic order. Banks arose not just to protect and expedite trade, but to transform how wealth was created, measured, and distributed. And this was only the beginning. The rise of financial power and the legacy of Renaissance banking. As banks grew stronger, their influence rippled across Europe. They didn't merely store wealth, They helped build kingdoms, topple regimes, and finance revolutions. Within palaces decorated with frescoes and tapestries, where bankers like the Medici and the Fuggers met with nobles and clergy, critical decisions were made about war, peace, commerce, and culture. The rise of banking coincided with the birth of a new social class, the bourgeoisie. Through access to credit, merchants and entrepreneurs could expand beyond their traditional limits. Wealth was no longer reserved for those with noble titles. It was accessible to anyone with ambition, strategy, and financial savvy. This shift changed the fabric of European society, challenging feudal structures and setting the stage for modern capitalism. International trade flourished. New networks of credit and correspondence connected distant cities, allowing goods and ideas to travel faster than ever before. Banking itself became more sophisticated. Organized branches, double-entry bookkeeping, and detailed records laid the groundwork for today's global financial infrastructure. Still, the dangers were real. Financial collapses were often triggered by political instability or overextended credit. Trust, intangible yet essential, was everything. The fall of the Bardi was a cautionary tale. No matter how powerful a bank might be, it was never immune to risk. Religion, too, was drawn into this economic transformation. For centuries, the church condemned interest as usury. Yet, as its own needs for funding grew, even the papacy turned to bankers. Over time, doctrine was reinterpreted, showing how even the most entrenched traditions could yield to financial necessity. But perhaps the most surprising legacy of Renaissance banking was cultural. Bankers became patrons of genius. Without Medici money, there might have been no Leonardo da Vinci, no Michelangelo, no Botticelli. Finance, in this sense, wasn't just transactional, it was transformational. Wealth became a fuel for beauty, innovation, and human progress. Today, we live in a world of digital transactions and global finance. But it all began in the marble halls and handwritten ledgers of Renaissance banks. They introduced the idea that money could move without physically moving, that wealth could be created through trust, contracts, and imagination. And from this history, we learn something vital. Wealth is not just what you possess, it's what you can mobilize. Credit can build empires or destroy them, and money, in visionary hands, can be a tool not only of power, but of purpose. So the next time you use your debit card, sign a loan, or transfer money online, remember, you're participating in a system born more than 600 years ago, shaped by ambition, ingenuity, and trust. A system forged between the domes of Florence and the markets of Venice. If this story inspired you, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, like the video, and share it with others who love uncovering the past to understand the present. In our upcoming episodes, we'll explore more turning points in financial history. The birth of banking was just the beginning. See you in the next video.